Maplestory the Novel, Season 1, Sacred Tears. Written by Tatsumari Korisuno. Chapter 20, Part 1. Curtailed. Light burst around Ariel and Rhinne as they appeared in a room deep within the temple. Rhinne fell to the ground as the teleportation spell's distance was greater than she was used to, making her dizzy. Grabbing Rhinne's hand, Ariel picked her back up and led her to the center of the room.
What are you doing? You said that I was going to be safe with him.
She squeaked as Ariel worked quickly, casting a potent spell over the sandglass she had grabbed a moment before.
I'm sorry, Rhinne. I had to make him think you would go with him.
Ariel answered, finalizing the spell and turning to Rhinne with tears staining her eyes.
I will ensure you stay safe, as will everyone you Soria. Please, forgive me, Rhinne.
Ariel cried, shoving the sandglass into Rhinne's chest, instantly making her feel sleepy. As the spell weaved around her, she drifted into the air, clutching the sandglass like an infant. When Ariel was sure that the spell had taken effect, she knelt to the ground and used every ounce of her remaining mana to erect a nigh impenetrable barrier around her daughter. As the barrier began forming, Ariel's eyes blazed as thunder clapped around her. Moments later, balls of light rose from Eusoria far below and into Rhinne. With one final chant, Ariel finalized the barrier just as Maga's Slow appeared, swatting her away with the back of his hand.
What have you done to her?
Slow asked with a torrid tone, walking up to the barrier to bring it down, only to be dismayed when it scorched the flesh of his hand instead.
I placed her in a state of eternal slumber.
Ariel grunted, reaching back for her leg, which lay at an unnatural angle.
Then I will simply take her power.
Slow answered, lifting his hand as black magic swirled around Rhinne, penetrating the barrier, only to be thrown out.
You've done your work well, Ariel, my love.
Slow smiled, clenching his burned hand and cracking his knuckles.
So long as she remains asleep, all her power is being used to keep the inhabitants of Eusoria safe in a world of her making.
Ariel hissed through clenched teeth. Slow grinned, turning back to the sleeping Rhinne and chuckling to himself.
You realize this is nothing more than a minor delay, Ariel. Your efforts will not save our daughter from what destiny has chosen for her. If I can't wake her here, I will destroy the world created in her dream.
Ariel tried to summon the strength to cast another spell, tapping into her infinite life force for power. Light hardened into spears, whining as they gathered power.
Careful, my love. If you hurl those at me, you just might hit Rhinne. You wouldn't want that now, would you?
Slow asked, holding his hand to the barrier once more as swirls of black gently flared up his arm. Ariel concentrated on a single spear, hurling it hard enough to howl through the winds. Slow caught the incoming spear and crushed it with ease. Ariel swung her hand as another spear hurled towards him, obliterated in a plume of black-violet fire, engulfing Ariel and tossing her back against a column. Once sure that Ariel would be tamed, at least for the moment, he turned his attention back to Rhinne, pushing power through the barrier surrounding her as she slept. The monks gathered around the mirror all sighed in disbelief. one of them turning to Minerna.
That's it then? There's nothing you can do?
I wish there were, good monk. But as I told the monks of the Red, worse can and will come if we make an oblivion known to someone.
A monk of the Blue took his mask from his face.
If this is allowed to continue, we will lose the new goddess of time. Ariel herself may become what she once was, and Eusoria will once again lose her to depression.
The monk of the Green stepped forward, holding out his hand. A spark of light appeared in it, revealing Ariel as she was before meeting Dane.
This cannot be allowed to happen, my goddess. Eusoria will not be able to withstand it. The darkness will come back even stronger than it is now.
I am well aware of that, good monks. But the mirror will only show me a few more years beyond this point. There is nothing after that. I cannot see if the new goddess or Ariel may be lost.
In the past, seeing nothing meant we failed,
the monk of the Green said. Minerna chuckled as she nodded, telling how the Great Nexus assured her that nothing was part of the current required timeline.
What if he's wrong?
The monk of the Blue asked.
I doubted Nexus, the light spirit, and Phanes for eons, and every timeline of my creation led to destruction. I can only trust in the wisdom of Nexus. He is infinitely more ancient than I, and can see time far beyond what I could ever hope to see.
Minerna sighed, staring hard at the mirror.
Yet, right before the nothingness, the mirror will show me the image of a young woman with hair of silver and eyes of blue, dressed in purple, escorting a large metal crest.
Minerna hummed, waving her hand over the mirror, revealing the woman she described.
There is something peculiar about this image, though.
Minerna said, waving her hand over the mirror again. The monks stepped closer to look at it, squinting their eyes and tilting their heads.
A duality of spirit?
The monk of the Blue asked.
A split life force? Twins, perhaps?
The monk of the Green asked. But to their questions, she had no answer. The three again focused on the mirror, pondering the image. There appeared to be a second woman, this one identical in appearance, but dressed in white and blue with gilded hair. What lay ahead of them, and who were these women they saw?
You are to speak to no one of this,
Minerna commanded, waving her hand as the image disappeared. The monks bowed in understanding, putting on their masks and leaving for their assigned tasks. Minerna looked back at the blank mirror and sighed a long breath.
I'm sorry, Ariel. I hope you can forgive me when the time comes.
To your left!
Will shouted as he and Tahir flattened to the ground as the omen swung its large, knife-like hand. Putting up her shield, Eleanor stopped it in a shower of sparks, her feet digging into the ground as she held off the brute's strength.
Rhinne, if you're going to do it, now's the time!
She grunted. Rhinne spun her hands around one another, pulling in bright blue energy from her hands into a giant ball of flames. Her hands shot forward with a quick flip of her wrists, a wall of golden flames erupting, charring everything in its path and turning the ground to glass. With only time to look up, the omen disappeared before it could even scream. Just as the last of the omen disappeared, a bright ring of white light burst from where it had stood a moment before. As the blaze of white expanded, the air felt light and calming. Breathing a sigh of relief, the four of them enjoyed the short respite before the darkness swept back in, weighing them all down.
There. That's the last of them.
Eleanor huffed, sheathing her sword and putting her shield over her back. She, Will, Rhinne, Xenos, and Tahir formed an elite omen hunting party, with Tahir as their commander.
Now tell me again how you became whatever this is? The omen cut your explanation short.
Will asked, motioning to Eleanor and her heavily armored figure.
It's something I'm experimenting with. The clerics and acolytes are powerful, don't get me wrong. But, as dangerous as the omens have become these last few months, the Order needs something more substantial than mages wielding a staff and robes.
She has a point, William, Tahir called, cleaning his dagger before shoving it into his belt.
I told you, Commander, it's Will, not William. But yes, I see her point. I just don't know what she is trying to be. The closest I can guess would be similar to the Paladins of Orion?
Will observed as Rhinne walked over to him and put her chin on his shoulder.
Oh, those soldiers are nothing more than overly fancy knights. Eleanor here is a true paladin.
Rhinne chimed as Tahir grunted. Xenos moved to Eleanor, taking her hand and kissing her knuckles as he looked up to her dragon's eyes.
I, for one, am very proud of her,
he grinned, making Eleanor blush and look away, clenching her hand until Xenos began to grunt and moan in pain.
Xenos, I'm sorry, I didn't mean...
No, love, it's all right. I'm still not used to your grip, is all.
He smiled, flexing his hand until Tahir cleared his throat. We should get going. We don't want to be here when night falls, he barked, picking up his things and heading back to the temple.
When night falls? How can you tell? It's constantly night here.
Will bleated, gathering his knapsack and taking Rhinne's hand as they trotted after the others. Behind them in the shadows, the man in the black and silver cloak stepped out. Black vapors and whispers shrouding him as he neared the center of the battle. Reaching out for where the omen stood, he quickly reeled, staring at his palm as though having been burnt.
That girl is hindering progress. It's time we talked.
He growled in his throat, whispers dancing on the wind around him. He turned his palm up where swirls of darkness sprang up within it. The power of the other clerics and acolytes destroyed the omens, leaving behind the most essential parts of them, the core. This girl could obliterate that core and even the surrounding darkness. If that girl destroyed the cores, it would set him back years, and he couldn't have that. Not when he was so close to his goal of finally achieving vengeance for his beloved. Upon returning to the temple, Tahir reported what they found and defeated during their patrol to Mars in the Knowledge Depository. Once acknowledged, Eleanor and Xenos left for her specially created training grounds as Tahir went to his room for some much-needed rest.
I suppose that leaves us.
Rhinne sighed, taking Will's hand.
What should we do then?
She asked while pulling his hand around her shoulders and beginning to walk to the front of the temple.
There are some creatures within the forest I'd like to study. They don't seem affected by darkness as much as the omens we've been fighting. Would you care to come along?
Rhinne sighed heavily, hoping that Will would put aside his studies so they might do something other than study creatures or fight omens for a while. Will had drawn her heart when she first laid eyes on him when she cleaned the darkness eating his body. Now that she was staying at the temple more permanently, she pursued his companionship more seriously, though it still felt like he wasn't as invested.